Okay, so this is section 7, number 9. I didn't write that up there. Section 7, number 9, on the diagnostic test that we've been going over in class. And to do this problem, you need to know a little bit about absolute value inequalities. The absolute value of a number, remember, is how far away from zero that number is. And so when you're graphing these kinds of inequalities, if it's a greater than inequality, you're going to end up with two sets like this where you're getting bigger and bigger and farther away from zero in your graph. When you have a less than inequality, you're going to have a graph that's arranged closely around zero, and it's going to just be one line, one set of points. So I can already tell from the very beginning that this is a greater than absolute value inequality because it has two groups of points shooting out farther and farther away from zero. So I know it can't be B, it can't be C. All right, it's got to be a greater than one. Now, to graph the A, you would say if the absolute value of x minus 1 is greater than 1, that means that the absolute value, that means that x minus 1 has to be either greater than 1 or x minus 1 has to be less than negative 1 because it's getting further and further away from 0 if its absolute value is getting bigger. All right, so if I'm saying this absolute value, the absolute value of this thing is bigger than 1, then it means it's either actually is greater than 1 or it could be less than negative 1 because it's getting away from 0, further and further away. Either way, either to the right or to the left. Okay, so here if you solve for x, you get x greater than 2. Here if you solve for x, you get x less than 0. And so is that what we have? No. We have x less than negative 2, x greater than 0 in our graph, so that's not it. So it's not A. It's pretty close to that. If we try D, we would have, okay, absolute value of x plus 1 is greater than 1, which means that x plus 1 itself is greater than 1, or x plus 1 is less than negative 1 because it's further away from 0 than 1 away on either side. So in this case, if you subtract 1 from both sides of this inequality, you get x is greater than 0. And over here, if you subtract 1 on both sides to get x by itself, you get x is less than negative 2. And that is, in fact, what we have in this graph. If you look at the graph, you can see that we have a circle on the negative 2, so it doesn't include negative 2, and it's all the numbers less than negative 2. And then on the 0, we have an open circle, and we're going to the right, so that's x greater than 0. So we find out that D is the answer to this problem. So one way to remember this is to go back and look in your Algebra 2 book on the absolute value inequalities, and we will cover this in class as time goes on, as we review all these concepts. So that is section 7, number 9.